Patch 16 is like none other, with find and raid requirements for the hideout and no flee extending the early wipe progression in a way that we have never seen before. But of course, new times require new strategies, and today I'll be showing you some of the best ways to navigate this adjusted early wipe, starting with the hideout. So other than selling crafts on the fleet, which isn't possible right now, one of the most important things about the hideout is for tasking. A good example of this is Salewers. I'm sure some of you are still to find them, or having bad luck on spawns for them, or even just getting out of raid with them, which can be severely demoralizing. But there are other ways outside of the obvious, being finding 3 in raid, as you can craft them in the med station level 1. This gives you another avenue outside of just looking for them as you go about your Tarkov business, but it also comes with some other requirements, which gives you something else to look for at the same time, which ends up with the same result. Firstly, you'll need to find all the parts to upgrade the med station in the first place. Don't forget to keep 2 of the basic bandages, as the ones from Therapist won't do, as they aren't found in raid. You also need the generator to start the craft even after the station is built, which itself needs security 1, and then for the Salewa craft you need 2 car first aid kits, so keep these as well if you can. In my personal experience this wipe, I found 2 Salewas myself, and then I used the craft for my final one, so look for both and complete it with whichever you find first. Another classic is the gas analyzer. These now have 2 crafts in the early hideout, one on the workbench level 1 and another one on the Christmas tree. To make the tree, you need the generator to be at level 1 first, and then it requires 1 of each bauble, white, red and purple, and all of these have to be found in raid 2 as it's technically a module. But make sure that you keep baubles in your secure container when you find them in raid, especially those that you're most short of, because they can be used as inputs for crafts even if you die and lose the find in raid tag once the tree has been made. The gas analyzer craft only needs 1 of each as well, so they're quite easy to make once you have it set up. The stretch goal here is probably to craft a LEDX, because we now need 2 find in raid, 1 for the hideout for med station level 3 and another one for the thick case quest with Therapist. The nutrition unit level 1 is another place that is handy for crafting iskras for Jaeger. All you need is squash and a small beef stew, because Therapist sells the crackers directly, meaning that you don't have to find these yourself. Although big cans of stew are also required for Jaeger's acquaintance task, if you end up with an excess of these, or cleverly save some of the ones that are non-find in raid that you get given at the start of the wipe, unlike me, you can combine these with more squash and rye croutons to make the small cans as well, leaving squash as the only piece that can't be gotten any other way than in raid directly. This gives you some extra flexibility to get through what can be quite an annoying quest if you don't get good RNG. On this broad topic, checking quest rewards has never been more important. For example, completing Gunsmith Part 1 gives you 1 set of bolts and nuts, which can be used for the workbench level 1 or the shooting range. And of course, daily tasks can give a bunch of different items, which are found in raid when completed. The next bottleneck that I have run into is hoses for the water collector, but even here we can be creative. Lavatory level 1 still has the hose craft, but this requires blue tape, wires and silicon tubing. Wires are not that rare in PCs really, and they can be made in the workbench as well from power cords too, so keep a few of these around if you need to, but blue tape can be gotten from ref level 1 if you're running short. I originally thought that his barter stuff was entirely useless because it can't be used to upgrade the hideout anymore, but they can be used for crafts as inputs, and hoses are one of them. There are many different combinations of items that you might get stuck on, so make sure that you do look around to see if there are any quests that give them as rewards, or any crafts that you can do which both output with find and raid tags on. Of course, some items like the measuring tape and the toothpaste for the lavatory simply have to be found, but for many others there is more than one way to get them. Also, hold on to all of your find and raid toolsets. You need so many for the hideout, and the only way to create these is through mechanics barter, which isn't find and raid. So hold off on the temptation to use find in raid toolsets to complete farming part 1 unless you're absolutely desperate, and use the barter version instead to get them, because you're gonna need a lot of them. Next up, what quests should we prioritize in the early wipe before the flea comes back online? Personally, I have been working towards Ragman's quests as quickly as possible, simply because of easier access to class 4 armor. Unless you've got really lucky farming Santa's sleigh or the festive crates, armor is probably one of the biggest upgrades that you can get to your loadout in the early wipe before the flea market comes back online. To get onto Ragman's quests, you don't need to do anything specific other than get to level 17 and meet his sales requirement, but once you're there, he still won't sell you any class 4 armor until you've completed some further specific quests. One of my favourites from previous wipes was Database Part 1, but the issue here is although the Thor armor that you get unlocked is very good, you can't buy it in cash as it's a barter still for slim diaries instead. This is not very useful until the flea opens because it's not sustainable to find these consistently. The better quest to focus on is Audit on Streets of Tarkov, and it also helps that this one is quite easy to do. Once done, you can grab 2 6B13 armors every reset for only 65k each, which will prevent you having to slip back down to class 3 and class 2 armor every now and then when you run out, which I've certainly found myself doing from time to time. Ever since the armor update, the 6B13 has actually been one of the better budget choices for early wipe. It repairs really well, and it covers the whole of the front body, including the groin, and you also get level 2 neck protection with it too, which given the lack of flea, should actually work better than usual against PMCs for the time being. Prior to doing this quest, make sure that you are min-maxing your armor effectively. For example, I found a Cuirass in Raid and have replaced the back plate on my class 4 armors with the class 3 plates in the Cuirass, and the front plate on the Cuirass with a class 4 plate from the other armors. So I've got 4 on the front and 3 on the back on every piece. This is obviously not the ideal situation, but it allows you to spread your class 4 armor across twice as many raids, being in the front only, rather than losing it all if you have it in both front and the back as the default on almost all carriers in the game. Number 3 is using the priority window in Raid. The new priority window mechanic is very cool for stash optimization, allowing the window of focus to be the last container opened. From here, Control-click puts any items into that container, but something not obvious to many at the moment is that you can use this feature in Raid as well. Get used to opening up the container that you want things to go into specifically, for example, opening up your backpack, because this makes it the priority window, and you can then control-click from your opponent's bodies or regular loot containers and everything will go straight into your bag. You can mix and match this by having both your bag and your rig open, as clicking into either of them will set that one to be the priority, and this can really speed up your looting in Raid once you get used to it. Next, we're going to take a look at a few other weapons mods that I didn't include on my previous video, either because I didn't realize that they existed or because I didn't think that they were that important, but this is a good place to showcase it. So the first one that I didn't know existed is on the RFB. The RFB historically has been one that has just been difficult to mod out because you can't really put lights and lasers on it, so it makes it very clunky in CQB. But a new part has been added here, which is the RFB quad rail 3-inch mount. This one is kind of cool because once you put it on, you can then add all the various things you might want. TBLs, you could put the Raptor AR on it, you could put WMX 200s, whatever you like, and you could put those on any of the sides, just not on the top. Another one that I didn't know existed is the M9A3 new magazine. This is actually on Peacekeeper level 1, and I think this might make the M9 one of the better pistols to use in the early wipe. You can go and get this 30 round mag from Peacekeeper level 1. So you've got a 30 round magazine for an M9. This is very, very cool. Only costs $29, which really isn't much. And as I said, it's not locked behind anything. It's just on Peacekeeper 1. So if you are a pistol fan, this is a really, really big upgrade to the M9. There's a new 50 rounder magazine for the PP19, so this now basically puts it on par with like the MP5 and the MPX, that kind of thing. Although it's not available straight away, it's on Skier level 3. So if you do like the PP19, you'll be able to get this kind of in the mid-game somewhere if you want to use it with something like AP 6.3 or PvP. There's another magazine for the Uzi. Unfortunately, this is only for the slow Uzi. As we are aware, there's 3 Uzis you can choose from: the submachine gun, the Pro pistol, and the SMG Uzi Pro. These ones are 1075 RPM each, and this one is only 600. So they are quite different. They're very, very different guns. But if we go to edit this one in particular, we can now see it has this thing, the Beta CMAG 100 round drum. At 600 RPM, you're basically never going to have to reload with this, and so it could be funny for some little meme kits. Something people have been asking for a while is some extra mods for the Benelli M3 Super Shotgun, because although you can get one of the longest magazines possible out of all shotguns with a 13 rounder, previously you couldn't add any flashlights or anything to it. It was really, really limited. So similar to the RFB in some ways, they've added these 2 clamps which you can add on, and now you can put on flashlights, lasers, and all of that good stuff onto the Benelli M3. So if you did really like this one and you like the idea of having one of these mega magazines that's kind of like a poking stick, the 13 rounder, then you can now do this. Shotgun fans rejoice. The last one I wanted to show up was this one, which is a CMAG. Again, this is the same people as for the Uzi, but this is the new 100 round drum mag. I wasn't really freaking out about this because there already is a 100 round drum mag for 5.56 that nobody uses because they're just super unwieldy. Minus 27 ergo on that. This one is very slightly better, minus 24 ergo, but the unload speed modifier is even worse, and the check speed modifier is about the same. This thing is also a kilogram, with no ammo in it at all, which is kind of mental, but it's there. And I guess the only good difference between them is this is 2x2 and this thing is 1x3. And I actually think a 2x2 magazine is probably slightly less restrictive. There are kind of more rigs that allow you to use 2x2 than 1x3, although it really depends on your preference on which rigs that you like to use. If we go on a link search, we can see which guns this is compatible with. You can get it for basically any of the 5.56 weapons, including the MCX in 300 Blackout as well. So you do have a bit of a choice on what to use it with, but it doesn't look like it fits into some weapons like the 5.56 MDR. In number 5, we have the changes to Scav AI. You have probably noticed this yourself already if you've played more than a handful of raids, but scavs are quite active on the map now. They will aggressively push you, they'll move from cover to cover more effectively than they did previously, and most noticeably will provide suppressing fire at your last known location. This one is particularly interesting because it not only prevents you from re-peeking the same angle on a scav for a few seconds while they burst fire the corner, but it also means that they make a lot of noise, making the map feel much more alive. In the past, scavs would only shoot at you if they could see you directly, but because they now will try to suppress PMCs that they get a glimpse of, there is a lot more gunfire going off on the map, which makes raids feel 10 times more alive than they used to, which I love. People in my chat while I was streaming were genuinely mistaking scavs for actual player scavs because it does look this way when you're not used to it, and I love this change which has made fighting scavs feel much more fun again this wipe. Once we all get used to the mechanics of it, some of the novelty will probably wear off and will feel less surprising again, but it's good to see the AI improving over time and becoming more spontaneous. So next up, go and check out my new short video on the continuous healing mechanic if you haven't already. Otherwise, as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.